Now, let's talk a little bit about how we're going to pot them up. So, 99% of the time I get them from you, Monica. They are coming to me in one of these, what is this, a 3-inch?
It's a 4.5 inch.
A 4.5 inch plastic pot that fits into those trays, because I'm always buying multiples, a whole tray. This one is lemon verbena. How old would you say these are?
This one is probably since the spring.
Okay, since the spring. So now let me ask another question.
This being July.
This being July? Yeah, thank you for pointing. Thank you, because who knows when you guys are going to be watching this.
Yes.
Thank you. Because aesthetics are always important to me. I sometimes like them. These are little boxwoods that you started for me, that you gave to me last time we met up. These are darling.
Yes, they are.
Little boxwood cuttings that I haven't yet decided how they're going to grow up, what they're going to be when they grow up. But you started these. Now, I transplanted them into these really fun terracotta pots that I think are cute, and I topped them with gravel. Is there any reason that we can't use terracotta pots, that we shouldn't, or should we try to get them kind of rooted first and then transplant them?
No, you could certainly use the terracotta pots. It might take a little more watering, you know, keep an eye on the watering, but the fact that you use the pea gravel on top keeps the moisture in, that reflects the sun off of the roots, and that's perfect.
Okay, so Monica's probably also familiar with my obsession with pea gravel.
I love it.
But this way, what I love about this stage, if you've rooted them, and we're going to talk about the exact how-to, but what I love about them in this stage, when they already, I think, are handsome looking and fun and cute, and I will show this on LVTV when I do a table setting. But what I love to use these are for place settings. I'll have a little start like this at everybody's place setting with their name on them as a little take-home, as a little take-home plant, and I think it's fun, and it makes a kind of a fun way to decorate your table. So that is one option. Okay, now let's get out what you use as a potting blend. Okay, I'm going to put some of this. Now, you got this at a wholesale place.
Yes, I did. This is a soilless potting mix, which means there's no garden soil in it. It's a bark mix. It's light and fluffy. It's good drainage.
Okay, and this on the bag, it says it's like a bark, almost like a mulch, mulch, but it's a soilless potting mix that I guess the purpose is it won't retain too much moisture.
There's some perlite in there and a little bit of vermiculite.
You can probably see some of the perlite in there or vermiculite. Now, there are other recipes that you can make yourself, or you can just take the easy way out and just get it already prepared. And normally I am all about easy because I am what you call a lazy gardener. So if I can get anything already prepared and not have multiple bags and stuff around, I try to do that. So you can see that that's just a really beautiful friable blend. And that's just a soilless potting mix that I imagine, Monica, you can get anywhere. You can get it.
Well, yes, you can get it at the garden centers. Usually they have a nice one.
Or Lowe's, or
yes, or TLC, or the American Plant is the wholesale supplier for nursery people.
Is there any special brand?
This is called Berger.
Berger?
I called it Burger. They let me do that.
Okay. Probably just look for something on the bag that says a soilless potting mix.
Yes.
And I think some of the bigger manufacturers produce those. So just look for a good soilless potting mix. Okay, so we have our pots. We're going to use plastic in this instance, and they're filled with our soilless potting mix. And I just went to get what I called a dibber. One thing I do want to get is a dibber.
We're getting a dibber.
And Monica, I guess, was not familiar.
No.
Was not familiar with that term. This would be the official horticultural term, dibber, aka a stick. And why we have this stick is because we want to kind of penetrate the soil beforehand and create an opening where we'll put the cutting, because if it would we could easily take a cutting and just stick it in there. I mean, you know, you could just do that. But if you did that, then any kind of magical potion we put on it is going to be sloughed off or all
pushed to the top edge. Yes.
Yeah, pushed to the top edge. So if we're going to go to the trouble of doing this, we're going to do it right. Consequently, you have to have a good dipper. Okay. Actually, I guess a chopstick would also would also work very well. Okay, so we're going to do that. Okay, so now tell us our options. Tell us our options, oh rooting guru.
Okay, here we go. This is Hormex powder. It's a chemical formula. It's a synthetic rooting hormone, and all rooting hormones have what is called indole-butyric acid, or IBA, which is easier to say. Indole-butyric acid.
Indole-butyric acid. Okay, this is new to me.
That's okay. That's what is in. We have natural plant material that contains its own indole-butyric IBA.
Okay.
And we have the chemical commercial formulas. You can also get just a little jar at your local garden store or hardware store. They usually
Amazon.
Carry it.
This is Bonide.
Yes.
I think, but there's all sorts of different, different kinds. Okay, so let's start out first of all, because it was one that I was familiar with before you told me about lentils. And by the way, you guys, make sure you've got your cell phone handy, because we're going to put lots of screenshot tips and techniques and hints for you so that you know the recipes to these things. We'll also probably try to put them in printables, but you can just screenshot these, again, these little tips so that you have them for future reference. So let's start out one by one. Now this one, how many of you have ever gotten a flower arrangement that had like curly willow in it or something?
I love curly willow.
And you pull it out and what's happened?
It's rooted.
So that tells us that it has some kind of natural hormonal rooting agent in it. So let's start out with willow water.
Willow water is really easy, and we have willow around our pond. We live on 10 acres. We have a pond. So I went down to the pond and cut long branches of willow. My husband did it, actually.
Is this just weeping willow?
This is not really a weeping willow. It's just a native willow here in Oklahoma. You can use any kind of willow. There's salix, called salix, I believe, but weeping willow or any other kind of willow, they all contain, you know, the properties that are needed for rooting hormone. And other properties. They're good for so many things. So we took long branches and cut them into what we were supposed to cut them into 1-inch pieces. Pencil thickness of the branches is what you want, and fresh growth. You don't want to pick a dead branch. It won't do you any good.
Okay.
So we cut 3 cups of willow cuttings and put them in this mason jar, which holds about 6 or 8 cups of water. We filled it with water, and you let it sit like this for 48 hours.
This is just regular tap water?
This is just tap water. Okay. And then after 48 hours, it's ready to go. You water your cuttings.
So 48 hours.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess just by virtue of making the cuts and the multiple cuts, with that surface area exposed to the water, that seeps and infuses the water with whatever the hormone is that has seeped out of the cuttings themselves.
So you would strain it off and put it in a container that you could use to water. Keep it in the refrigerator. Okay, it keeps for 2 months. It keeps for 2 months in the refrigerator, which is, you don't want it to sit out.
So then let's just take one of my cuttings over there and let's just pot up how you would do this.
Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull the bottom leaves off. You can save them for chicken.
Yeah. We'll have our roast chicken tonight.
Oh, yes.
I know, don't you just love...
So you can actually set your cuttings down in the water and let them sit. Also, if you want to.
And let them saturate for a while. That's
and let them saturate for a while. The thing about sitting cuttings in water, to me, the roots are a little weaker than if you just put the cutting down in the soil and let the roots push out. They're strong then.
Okay.
So
the other thing is you'd be tempted to just stick the cutting in that water, and you don't really want to contaminate the batch you just made.
Yes.
So probably, as a matter of course, going forward, instinctively I thought, oh, that's a great idea. But now I'm thinking, no, you're right, because we want success. We want the cuttings to really not only put out roots, but put out substantial roots so that they will thrive and grow into a plant later. Okay, so let me ask you another question. Do we want to recut that, or does it matter? Or?
No, it doesn't matter. The thing about willow water also, it contains a natural fungicide, which keeps your soil from getting, it's antifungal. Yes, antimicrobial, all the good
Antimicrobial, antifungal. I love knowing this.
That works. If you have a cutting and it sits in a humid place too long, the soil can build up microbes. So this is a good...
and rosemary is susceptible to powdery mildew.
Yes.
So I think that's a really good point, and to kind of spread out your cuttings a little bit so they at least have some air circulation in between them.
So what you could do, you could take your cuttings, you could strain off your willow water into a separate container, save part of it maybe, and you can add water to it as you use it. It'll still be good to go. But you could set them in your willow water while you're getting your pots ready.
Okay, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, after it's been saturated, let's pretend that this has been sitting in some willow water. Are you going to then stick it in there and water it with willow water?
Yes.
Okay.
And even after your cuttings root, it's good to water them with willow water even afterwards. The fresh new transplants benefit from the willow water later. So it's good to keep, if you have a willow tree, it's good to just keep some.
Yeah, that is wonderful.
In the soaking process. So I would just stick this down in. Maybe cut off the bottom a little bit. Is that okay?
Yep.
That way it goes, get it a fresh start. How's that?
Very good.
Okay.
Okay, and then are you going to secure it very much, or do you want it pretty loose?
It will eventually pack down. This is a woody stem, so it is going to take a little longer. I would say 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Then the fresh new growth on the top is green. It would do in several weeks. This is going to take twice as long since it's woody.
Okay.
But it's a bigger cutting.
Okay.
So.
It's a bigger cutting. Okay. That is great to know. So there we have a willow water a willow water cutting. Okay, let's now try a different technique. So let's grab a different type of plant. Okay, my beloved boxwood, and I think this is just wintergreen. So I'm gonna just remove the bottom ones, and I don't know why, if this is just
it's a good idea.
If it's just habit or whatever, but I always would kind of cut the bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and remove that one too. Now this would also be a good, cute little cutting.
Yes.
Monica and I hate to throw away anything.
Yes.
Anytime I am pruning something, she'll say, now make sure to save your cutting.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got this here, and you can see that because Monica gave me permission to cut a long stem, that it would root as effectively as a small stem, I've got a good head start on a cute little topiary right here. And then I think I'm going to let it grow a little bit taller, so I'm not going to prune off or pinch off that terminal bud. Okay, so now let's do this one with a commercial rooting hormone.
Right, okay, very good. And your dibber.
And my dibber. Oh, yes. And you know what? I need to redib. So.
There you go.
Now, you told me something. Tell me why you have put it into a separate container here.
It's to keep, if you start putting your cuttings, all of your cuttings into the original container, you're going to contaminate the container with whatever's on your cutting.
Right.
So I put a little bit into a separate container and use it just for the day.
Okay, just for the day. Now, would we normally dip this in water, or does it matter?
You can dip it in water, yes, and then put it in the rooting hormone that should do it. That's great.
But it actually, as you can see, I don't know if, let me move this.
Is that not deep enough?
I'm not sure. You can't know. I'm just afraid that people can't see. Okay, so you can see that even without water on it, it is doing just fine, adhering to the cutting. So I've got my pre-dibbed soilless mix here, and then I'm just going to put it down in there. And I'm not, can I put it not too deeply so that...
You can, sure.
Because I want some of that trunk exposed right away. Now let me ask you another question. At this point, would I have your permission to start staking it already?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So at the very inception of this cutting, I could put a stake in it.
Oh, okay.
And secure it to get a topiary form. And because this stake is tall, depending on what you want the mature height to be, then get a stick or a stake that is the appropriate height for what you ultimately, how tall you want it to get. So you could go ahead and stake this, and it would be great. And the other thing is if I had done it in a clay pot, it would already be a cute baby little topiary, and then I could mulch it with gravel. So this is technique number 2, a synthetic hormonal rooting powder that you can get just about anywhere. And then talk to me about watering after. So if I'm watering with willow water or just plain water, am I saturating the soil? Am I just moistening the soil? What am I doing?
You would saturate it if it has good drainage. It will be fine. Sitting in water is not good for rooting because they tend to rot.
Okay.
Another thing I would like to mention is labeling.
Oh,
yes. I'm really bad about labeling.
Too.
Then you don't know what you have and how long you've had it there, and so I do a lot of like I even use plastic forks sometimes.
Yes, I've gotten several things that have plastic forks.
But if you put the date and the name and the technique,
okay,
we'll do that later.
Date, name,
and technique. Yes,
I think that's all really, really important. And not only that, but even the year, not just the date, but the year.
Yes.
Because I've forgotten now how old some of my topiaries are. And people have always asked me, well, how old is that topiary? If I had kept some kind of record of it, then I would know when its birthday was. And we would know just exactly how mature it is. So when people say, well, how long does it take for something to grow to that size? Because I don't know about you, Monica, but for me, if I say something was 2 years ago, it was probably 5. So that's great. So we would mark this, and this is a great way to reuse, recycle, repurpose any plant tags you already have. I like even just little pieces of wooden bark, strips of wooden bark that I write on or whatever, something that is kind of pleasing to look at as well. The other thing that I would say is important, we're really getting into the nitty-gritty here, is that Monica doesn't just say this is rosemary. She will tell me that this is, what are some of the varieties? Spice, World.
This particular one is Madeline Hill.
Madeline Hill,
yes.
Okay. And then what's the other? Spice Island.
Spice Island, there's a whole lot of different varieties of rosemary, and there's different grades of culinary benefit, you know, but they all smell good. They're all beautiful. They're all good for culinary, all of them.
And the other thing that I think you need to be mindful of and pay attention to the variety for different reasons is they have different kinds of growth habit.
Yes.
So if you think about your end result, so if I want, like I have found Spice Island, or what was this variety again?
The nickname is Hill Hardy, but it's named after Madeline Hill.
Madeline Hill, and Madeline Hill is?
She's in Texas. She's an herbalist.
How fun! Yes. This looks to me like it would make a great standard.
Yes.
In other words, a standard, you guys, is just a ball on a trunk.
Yes.
So this grows straight. It would make a great standard. Versus, I took a couple of cuttings of Chef's Choice rosemary, thinking and I'll show you guys later because I'm going to do a tablescape. See how this has an arching kind of pendulous form? This I could make easily into a heart.
Oh, I know you could do
you
that.
Could,
yes.
Look at that.
I love that.
Into a heart.
Yes.
Or into a wreath.
A ring, yes.
Into a ring.
Okay.
And so I think it's just like, you know, Michelangelo would talk about that the form was already in the marble.
Yeah.
He's just cutting away the excess. Look at it that way. What you ultimately want to do and create is already in the natural growth habit of the plant itself. So when you're cutting, think about taking cuttings that are already doing what you want the topiary or the plant to ultimately do.
There's a rosemary that's called prostrate or trailing.
Okay.
Rosemary. It blooms, little blue blooms. It's beautiful.
Yes, it is beautiful.
It does really nice topiaries around a ring or a heart wire shape frame. It's not hardy, which is okay if you have it in your window in the winter.
That is the one that I used to do that exact same thing. And I don't have it here. Well, I'll try to get a still that Stuart can insert later to show that's exactly what I did. And talk about a beautiful plant in temperate climates as it, oh gosh.
It's sturdy, yes.
It's sturdy. And I guess rosemary just can almost be problematic in some places because it grows so easily. Here, we cherish our rosemary, don't we? And by the way, another reason that I love this as a topic, we're kind of digressing just into herbs in general, but rosemary stands for remembrance.
Yes. Memories,
yes, for memories. And so I always, if I have it in some kind of bouquet, especially for things that are near and dear to me, for funerals or something like that, I always like to tuck something in there for remembrance because I think it's just such a dear and sweet sentiment. And people really, they really like to know that because we attach meanings to things. Okay, so now, for the most fascinating, and I have to share. Monica sent me this recipe a couple of years ago, and I think maybe the very original format you got it, but half of it was in Spanish or Portuguese. I can't remember now, and I had to say, Monica, okay, this is all well and good, but I need some interpretation. I need some interpretation
translation,
here. Translation here. Okay, so this, you guys, is the most fascinating and I think you told me the most efficacious, result-producing, highest success ratio, potent of them all. And if any of you guys know, Monica and I have been trying to remember who the instructor was at Hogwarts that taught potions. And maybe even who the actress was who played it. I can't remember, but please let me know in the comments. If my sons were here, they would be able to tell me immediately and would just be mortified that I don't remember who it was. But this is the magical potion. Okay, tell us all about a hormonal, wonderful, magical elixir you can make out of just a common bag of lentils.
Right. Okay, I got this from a friend of mine who's Mexican, Spanish, and she had to translate for me. But it was a video of a young man, and it's La Huertina de Tony, which is the greenhouse of Tony, and we called him El Guapo because he was so cute. So then I have looked this up, on other venues, and found out that lentils have a natural rooting hormone in lentils, but there's a process to getting it to the point where you actually water with the lentil juice. So what you do is you take a cup of lentils to 4 cups of water. And you soak it.
We'll do a screenshot this so you guys don't have to write this down. We'll make sure that you get this information.
In English.
Yes, in English.
Or Spanish.
In English. Or Spanish.
Yes. But so you do the 4 cups of water and you let it sit overnight, 8 hours or overnight. until it softens up. And then the next day you pour it off into something else. Save that water. It's already got qualities in it that you can use for transplants or cuttings. Save it somewhere in the refrigerator. This will keep.
Yeah, you don't want to get. Yeah. I tried to make it once.
I know,
and I
it
didn't
smells
put
so
it
bad.
in the refrigerator.
It's not good to keep out.
So no, but it was
Okay,
fine.
very good.
In the refrigerator, it's fine.
Okay. So then you pour off down to where the lentils are just soaking. And you do this every day until the lentils sprout. Once they sprout, you strain it off, you put it in your blender, and you smush it into a creamy mixture, and you use that cream mixture in a 1-to-10 ratio of water, and that's your rooting hormone.
Okay.
And the way that I believe in this and swear by it, I had Gardenia Cuttings, which I don't do gardenias. It was for my friend, and I said, you can't root gardenias.
Yeah.
Well, we did cuttings. We did them in rooting hormone. They sat for 9 months, did nothing. In 2 weeks after using the lentils, they were rooted. It was amazing.
You are kidding.
No. I said, oh my gosh, I will do this forever. You know, so I swear by it, but it keeps for 2 weeks in the refrigerator. So you just kind of have to keep a lentil soaking thing going on.
And so it's more labor intensive.
Yes.
But the risk versus the reward,
yes,
or labor versus the reward, it makes it well worth it.
Yes.
Now I have to, true confessions here, this is one of the reasons that I have you do most of my cuttings for me. You know, my old 1935 house, I just don't have a lot of space. But you do. You've got a wonderful place in Chickasha. You've got a greenhouse.
I'm close to Jones Arcadia. That's okay.
In Jones Arcadia, but that's when I was first told where you live, she told me. So at any rate, excuse me.
We're back. That's
in
okay.
Arcadia, my bad. We'll do a little tour around Oklahoma for you.
Okay.
But what I started to say was, that's why I have Monica do it for me, because she's got a greenhouse. She can do the cuttings. I do send her home with lots of special type of plants. One thing that I would really like to try, because they're so hard to find, it used to be such a common plant, is my Chinese snowball viburnum. That is so hard for people to find, and I would love to be able to take cuttings of that and, you know, give it as gifts. We do want to be mindful, however, of things that are patented, things that are, you know, commercially grown or whatever. We want to be very mindful of that. I don't want to get in trouble here. But I think especially for heirloom herbs, for really old-fashioned plants that are hard to find, for just economics of propagating common plants, I think that is, you know, is something to keep in mind. So to kind of wrap up this last, well, we've got one more segment on how to care for them afterwards, but 3 different options: synthetic hormonal powder, we've got willow water, and we have the magical lentil elixir. So all of those, we will put the recipes in printables and you can screenshot them. Again, really, I love taking risks in the garden that aren't huge, but have a huge return.